Amanda, are we good? All righty. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It's a little moment or two after 9. We'll call the roll in a moment, but just wanted to welcome everybody that's both present and those that may be watching online to our second regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners for March 2001, another snowy day. For those of you here, I do want to recognize that we recognize the governor's mask order. We know it's in effect. There's both requirements and exemptions. There are exemptions for folks that are speaking in public, such as we are today, and anybody that would be at the microphone, and there are personal exemptions that are mostly medically related, and certainly we have no business digging into people's personal medical issues. We do have a presentation for one of our items today that's got a hard time of 9:30. That person's going to be zooming in, so where we are on the agenda, we may take a short break at that time to take that 9:30 piece, and then we'll come back to wherever we were at. Quite a few things on the agenda today, but we'll get to that in a moment. So for now, I'd just ask Amanda if you could call the roll. Oh, sorry, invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Dallas.
Thank you for standing for our prayer. Quick note, it's my problem, my negligence in getting back with Pastor Janes on for him not being here today, so I apologize for that. We'll continue to do better. Let us pray. Father in heaven, how good it is to come before you, Father, acknowledging you as our creator. Father, the one who created this world, this universe, for a beautiful place for us to live, all the way down here to this beautiful Elbert County, and we're thankful for that. And Father, we're thankful for the moisture that you sent just now and also last week, Father, while it caused issues for people and some extra work. Father, we know the ground needs the moisture, and we're so thankful for that when you send it. And Father, on that note, I want to thank and just pray that you'll give a blessing to those in the emergency management office, Father, and the road and bridge and the sheriff's office who put themselves at peril, Father, to make sure that the roads are clear, that people are safe when they call and they need help. And we just thank you for their service and their dedication. We just pray you continue blessing on them and for their safety and their willingness to go and help us. Father, do pray for our country. Father, we have many issues facing our country. We just pray for a revival, turning back to you and to your book, Father. It has the rules for us to live by and in accordance and to have a peaceful life, and we just pray that will happen. We pray for our leaders, from the president all the way down here, Father, to our local leaders, Father, that they turn to you to when they are making decisions, Father, that you will guide them in the way that it will benefit everybody. Father, I just pray now as we get into this meeting, as we have different topics, Father, that we treat each other as we always should, in the way that we would like to be treated, and that we can make progress for what's going on here. We thank you so much for the way you guide and bless us. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dallas. And I would ask folks to just keep the families of Officer Talley and the 9 that were killed in Boulder yesterday in your thoughts. With that, Amanda, if you could call the roll, please. Here.
Here.
All righty. First order of business is approval of the agenda. I would accept a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, first order of business is consent agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve consent as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Elected officials, department heads, staff reports. Do we have any elected officials that have anything to report? Nope. Okay. With that, I will turn us over to Winter Storm X. Was the hardest part of the storm figuring out how to pronounce its name, or?
Yeah. Commissioners Rory Hale, Director of Public Works. I wanted to kind of rename the storm after Monty Stormborn. We didn't have an opportunity to include the last storm statistically, but this one, we took a pretty good hit. I think the blessing in disguise this year was that we learned an awful lot of positive things from the bomb cyclone. So we're just going to go through a few slides. We've got some pictures. Shelby, please. Another storm that was predicted well in advance. We weren't real sure what we were going to get. Storm totals changed. I think at one point they said upwards of 5 or 6 feet in Elbert County. Thankfully, that didn't end up being the case, but we still got quite a bit. There were actually places in, I believe, Elkhorn that we had drifts upwards of 10 to 15 feet. Is that correct? Okay. You see how many man hours. I won't tell you how long some of the guys worked because they went nonstop. This is the last estimate we had for expenses, and you can see it was $177,000. So hopefully folks realize it is costly, other than the fact that you've got first responders, road and bridge, that take time away from their families to do this job. Not one time did I hear, nor I don't believe did Monty, any complaining or griping from anybody. The guys did what they had to do and did a great job at it. Okay, next, please. Okay, this is pretty important here. We had 3 notable rescues. 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, the 13th, Elbert Fire requested assistance for a critical patient. Motor grader was deployed. The nearest hospital is outside the county boundaries. We contacted Douglas County. Pretty much we're told 2 hours, if not more. We went ahead and gave approval to go ahead and escort the ambulance. So basically from the southern tip of the county all the way to Parker Adventist. I think in this instance it saved the guy's life. So it was Terry Tweedy, wasn't it? Terry Tweedy was a blade operator. So Elbert County personnel operating a front-end loader escorted Elizabeth Fire to respond to a woman in labor. Found out that a baby was born. Baby's doing good. We still don't know the name of the baby, but
Zillia? Or?
yeah, Zelia. Yeah, Montalisa. Elbert County SO requested aid to clear the road for an ambulance to reach a patient in Western Subdivision who had been in a coma with in-home care for the past 50 days. And that was a Arapahoe County deputy, right? The patient woke up after all this time on Sunday morning, and Road and Bridge were able to get the ambulance to the residents within 10 minutes. So, okay, next slide, please. Just some of the messaging that we got. We know what we do sometimes. We don't always hear all the positive things, and it's nice to see that people recognize that guys are out there and they're putting themselves at risk, but they're taking care of our community. So, next slide. And you can just kind of pan through these. These are just some of the pictures that were taken. I want to point out something. I don't know if it was that loader, but Kyrie Zion was in the shop putting chains on the loader So I think that's definitely above and beyond. Okay.
Now, to be fair, he's one of your shorter employees.
He is.
but-
So that's the presentation. Again, I can't say enough about Road and Bridge. They're outstanding. You know, these guys work tirelessly, Monty especially. Again, thanks to everyone that was involved in this, for Alex, the SO, all the fire districts. I think it's a pretty good team. So anyway, do you have any questions?
Any questions or comments?
All I can say is thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, the work that you guys have done, I mean, recovery from that storm was tremendous and quick, but I think a lot of that goes to the work you've been doing for the last few years to, you know, we put crowns back on the roads, but to get ditches where you can put snow so it doesn't melt back onto the roadways. And yeah, I know we're always going to have mud, but for the amount of snow we got, you know, how quickly it was all cleared and the condition the roads have remained in is tremendous. So glad we've had cool nights to keep the mud kind of stiff, but but it's been good. So thank you. Alex, did you have one add from the emergency management side? Oh. Oh.
There we go.
There you go.
Alex Jakubowski, Director of Emergency Management. Really just wanted to fill in some of the blanks that Rory didn't cover from my perspective. In the run-up to the storm, we pre-positioned 3 of our shelter trailers, one out to Agate, one to the American Legion post, and one here to the fairgrounds over at the exhibit building, just to have that equipment in position should we need to activate the shelters. We also had Simla PD is a shelter, and we had the former mayor, who's a Red Cross volunteer, ready to stand up that location. And Sun Country Church has recently gotten certified by the Red Cross to be a shelter, so we had that one on standby for one of my shelter volunteers. Put that whole, it's approximately 15 volunteers that I've trained up to respond to a shelter that I need activated. That whole group was on standby. The EOC staff went on standby roughly Friday morning. Didn't need them until Saturday morning, but the onset of this storm was somewhat unpredictable. We did have a pre-storm coordination call on Thursday and then again on Friday with Jack, the local weather guru, and the majority of first responders and Rory's crews. Also sent out a code red notification on Friday and on Saturday, urging people to not get on the roads. It was a little premature because the snow didn't actually start falling until Saturday night and really didn't pick up really until Sunday morning. Shelby, Sam, and Kyrie and yourself were all partnered together to handle the social media campaign, posting road closures and making sure that, you know, that message of, you know, staying off the roads and not being a interference for the first responders and road and bridge crews, I think really did help out in getting that message out. And then based on the road and bridge recommendation, we did coordinate with to put one of those variable messaging signs out on 86 for commercial trucks. If they do drop the gates on 86, that was one of the lessons learned from the bomb cyclone, was to give them a parking spot off of the highway so they weren't jackknifed trying to turn around at County Road 17. And then I did push out a hotline number for any stranded motorists to try to offload some of that call volume from dispatch and have it come straight into the EOC. Storm really didn't show up until later on Saturday, but we did go ahead and activate the EOC at noon and then deactivate it at 8 p.m. As I said, we really didn't see any major impacts, so we were really just monitoring then. The storm really did pick up Saturday night into Sunday morning, and we reactivated the EOC at 6 a.m., and 86 had just gotten shut down about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, and some of the gates were down, but at least according to CDOT, the entire piece of 86 was shut down from Elizabeth all the way out to Lyman. All 3 snowcats got pressed into service, and then the military vehicles that the sheriff's office has, all of them, I would say by about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, started performing rescues for stranded motorists, and it really didn't stop until about 2 a.m. Monday morning. We wound up activating 2 shelters, American Legion Post and Sun Country Church. There really weren't a whole lot of impacts east of Kiowa. The sheriff's office did place a posse member right here on the east side of town at the gate to make sure that people weren't going eastbound on 86, because that really complicates rescues once people get east of here. We wound up with 15 people at Sun Country Church, mainly pulled off of County Road 194, and then 3 people at the American Legion posts. And as I said, the rescues pretty much were all wrapped up by about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then Monday morning was really just cleanup and trying to deactivate those 2 shelters, and then shuttling all of those guests back to their vehicles. Thankfully, compared to the bomb cyclone, where people did not know where their vehicles were when they got rescued, the majority of the people that got rescued this time around had a pretty good idea of where their vehicles were, so it cut down that time to reunite them with their vehicles. And then once all of our guests were out of those 2 shelters, then we were able to deactivate, and I was able to go home. That was, I think, all told about 30 to 31 straight hours, on my end. But I think everybody learned a lot from the bomb cyclone. There were, a lot of improvements, from 2 years ago, and I think the coordination of all the different agencies, was vastly improved, and I think that's why we had much fewer incidents and impacts, and as opposed to 2 years ago where we had 7 shelters activated with over 450 people in those shelters. This, I think, was a much better result, and I think it turned out really well for the amount of snow that we got in a shorter period of time. Any questions? All right, thank you.
No, Alex, we just did want to thank you very much, and I'm glad, we do learn some from every event, which is good, but I think looking into how do we work with a virtual EOC, so when we have events like this where the next shift can't get there, or we don't have to have 2 or 3 shifts of people just camped out waiting for their turn, is probably our next step forward. So.
It was something that we started building, especially with COVID. I realized I wasn't going to be able to get people into the Emergency Operations Center with all the COVID restrictions. So that was a project that me and the IT director were working on, building it on a Microsoft Teams platform. And unfortunately, due to the personnel changes, we lost a little bit of progress with that project. I'm hoping to pick that up with Phoenix and actually get that fielded. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. From your point of view, Sam, did you want to add anything on the on the storm, or?
Not really, Commissioners, other than, yeah, everybody, I think, learned a lot. That's been said. Everybody did what needed to be done. Road and Bridge worked extra time. Emergency Management worked extra time. Sheriff's Office worked extra time. We had a pretty good setup with a virtual PIO type function that seemed to work okay. And then, so yeah, I think we just continue to learn from our past. This was quite the storm, you know, fourth largest, I think, in Colorado history is what I saw the numbers, region-wide, not necessarily in Elbert County, but, you know, we'll keep improving and keep it going.
Thanks. Yeah, the one I just did want to add, and we did declare an emergency during that period. It lasted 28 hours.
Yeah.
That was as long as it needed to last before it was.
And that emergency declaration was ratified in the consent agenda. And again, we do that for a couple of reasons. One is in case we do need state resources, it gets us in the queue in case we need to call those resources in. We did not need to call those resources. And then keeping the roads clear. Sometimes people abandon vehicles in the middle of the roads, and they've got to be moved. And they've got to be moved quickly if you have a medical rescue to be done. And sometimes that isn't pretty either.
No, appreciate that. So I know you had a couple of other topics to cover. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. So Sam Albrecht, County Manager, I've got a couple other items to just fill the commissioners in with. One is that, as you know, the American Rescue Plan, which is the stimulus bill from the federal government, was signed into law on on March 11th. It requires that the federal government starts distributing the money to the counties and the towns directly no later than 60 days later. So by May 11th, we should have our first round of funding. It looks like it's still going to be about $5.2 million total. We'll get half of that now, and this is for expenses related to COVID and economic stimulus through 2024, I believe is the end date. We're still waiting on guidance on what they're going to consider to be qualifying expenses, because we need to plan on how that money is spent so that when we get the federal audit, get the single item audit, that we have everything approved. So we're still waiting on that language to come down. In addition to that, we are still going through, and so that one we're tentatively calling CARES, COVID Relief 2. COVID Relief 1 was the $2.1 million that we got. We're working through the end of spending on that one. We are going to open another round of small business and nonprofit grants in the amount of about $200,000 total. We expect to roll that out sometime after the 1st of April, and we'll make sure that we get some press out about that. We'll have to take a look, since we've done fairly well with our other grants from a couple of other programs through to the county businesses and the county nonprofits. We may have to look at a criteria scoring system, and we're working on that right now. But we will plan to spend as much of that $200,000 as we can, as quickly as we can, to continue to help businesses and nonprofits and individuals in the county.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All righty. Next item on our agenda is open public comment. We're coming up on 9:30, but the items coming up for discussion and action after that will be a look at our budget guidelines for next year, COVID response and where we go from here, the pause ballot initiative, and then action later. We've got pretty much, they're generally housekeeping items, but if anybody's got any public comment on anything other than that, we'll take it at this time. Okay, seeing none, and we had no general public comment that came through email or anybody that wanted to be called for general public comment, is my understanding. Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll close public comment, and we'll move on to discussion items. And our first, since we've hit 9:30, will be the presentation on the economic development report. I think we're a few minutes out from them being ready, so. Okay. Yeah, we'll just take a brief recess while we're getting set up for that.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound. You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Goodbye.
She's tough.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. You entered 98339518336. This meeting ID does not exist. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound. You have Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. Please enter meeting pound. After the tone, please record your name. When you have finished recording, press pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 3 participants in the meeting. You are muted. You can mute or unmute yourself by pressing *6. You are unmuted.
Here comes.
Mr. Chairman, are you ready, sir?
Yeah, so I guess it's 9:33, we're coming out of recess. for discussion, presentation of economic development report by Puma. And
Hey guys, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
Can you hear us?
we need to get your we need to get you up on the big screen. Stand by. Okay, we got you guys up on the big screen. Mark, make sure your mic's on. You got a green light? Okay, we're good.
all righty, Mike. Let's go.
Okay, great. Good morning, commissioners, elected officials, Mr. Albert, counselor, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mark Dettenreiter, Economic Development Manager, Elbert County. So, commissioners, as you know, economic vitality is one of your key goals, which is incorporated in both the county's 2018 to 2027 strategic plan and also the 2018 comprehensive plan. So I'm here this morning to share the findings of an economic development and recovery study. We contracted an outside firm, Puma. They conducted this study from November 2020 to February 2021. This study had two parts. The first was looking at other like counties and how they were managing economic development and recovery. And then the second piece had to do with budget and revenue data, so just comparing revenue sources. The study looked at 7 comparable counties. We all know that counties are very unique and individual, like Elbert County. So these counties that were looked at, Alamosa, Chaffee, Delta, Fremont, Logan, Morgan, and Otero, based on population similarities, budgets, etc. Please note this presentation and report is informational. These are just some data points for you gentlemen to review and consider. I'd like to introduce the Puma team that will be presenting today. We have the president of Puma, Brad Segal, and then we also have a senior associate for Puma, Andrea Buglione. So good morning, how you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning, Elbert County. Can you hear us and see us?
We can do both. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Great. But Mark, do you want us just
Yes, the floor is yours. Take it away. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, commissioners and everyone else in the room that we can't see, thanks for taking time today to let us report on this economic development work that we've done for Elbert County. Just a quick introduction from us. Our firm, Puma, we're located in Denver. We do community development and economic development work nationally. We've worked in 37 states, 250 cities. We've been around almost 30 years. And we do both downtown and Main Street type work. And we've also done some work for other rural communities in Colorado. So we are thrilled to have worked with Elbert County over the last several months. The other thing I'd add is just myself. I'm a Denver native, for what that's worth, and have been in this field for about 35 years. I used to work with the Downtown Partnership here in Denver. And in consulting, we've been around for 28 years. I'd like Andrea to make a brief introduction, and then we will present to you our findings.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrea Buglione. I have been working with Brad for a little over 5 years now. And so I've just been able to work in a variety of different cities across the country. And actually before Puma, I served as an economic development specialist in a small town in Massachusetts. So I do have some of the more rural and small town economic development perspective as well. And it's been really fun working with Sam and Mark, and we're excited to share our findings with you.
Great. Can everyone see the slide on the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So again, this is the full crew at Puma. We're a smaller firm, and we're located again on beautiful Colfax in Denver. Mark helped us with the introduction, so what we're going to present to you are the findings from the two parts of the project that we worked on. The first, looking at best practices, if you will, from other economic development approaches in rural counties that we think are comparable to Elbert County. And then also we were charged with looking at different revenue sources. How do counties diversify revenues, and is there anything to learn there for Elbert? All this work was done in the context, obviously, of the pandemic. So we also sought some of the best practices for COVID relief as we were right in the middle of things when this project started. With that, Andrea, I'll toggle the slides. Just tell me when you want to go forward. Andrea's going to present part one. I will present part two.
Great. So just to kind of orient everyone to the types of entities we surveyed, while there was some variety in terms of the type and general structure of these economic development entities, the most common is certainly the Economic Development Corporation, or EDC, which is essentially a nonprofit devoted to promoting economic development in a specific geography. Only one of the counties we surveyed, Otero County, housed its economic development services within the county structure itself. Although even in Otero County, the department certainly doesn't function in a silo. So partnerships with organizations like the Chamber, the SBDC, municipalities, and the county were a big part of Otero County Economic Development Specialist role. We also found that evolution seems to be occurring within this EDC model. So for example, in Alamosa County, the EDC recently disbanded, and some of those economic development functions were absorbed by Alamosa County Chamber of Commerce, and then some of it was actually taken on by the city of Alamosa. And then another example is Delta County. So their EDC recently morphed into a new organization. And one of the reasons that members began to lose trust in the EDC was that it really tried to be too many things at once. So the organization ended up spending a disproportionate allocation of resources on projects that didn't directly benefit the business community. But this new iteration seems to be more functional and with more municipalities in the county endorsing it and contributing financially. Next slide. Which leads into this next topic about the scope of services. We found there was a significant variety among the counties in terms of the role they play in economic development. So it really ranged from more traditional business recruitment role to some entities that were really involved in this broader community building conversation. Some of them administer their own revolving loan funds, although most of them really just serve as a liaison to connect prospective businesses to existing regional funding sources and incentive programs. In several examples, the EDC's relationship with the local property owners and just familiarity with the available land, which is something that might not always show up on internet searches, enabled the EDC to serve as a liaison between prospective developers and businesses to available land. And then most of the counties also provide a range of economic and workforce data on their websites to help market the region. Fremont County is big on this profit cluster approach. So essentially, they went through a strategic planning process and ended up identifying 4 industries they really wanted to focus on building in the county. And they structured their EDC around these clusters. So, for example, their entire mentor network for businesses in these industries is based on these clusters. And then some of these entities really took a more proactive role in community development and being involved in some special projects. And that ranged from affordable housing studies, being involved in infrastructure and energy development, downtown revitalization. One example, the EDC was involved in property acquisition. They converted a property to a co-working space, which they hope eventually will generate some revenue. It hasn't yet. Next slide, Brad. So in terms of funding and staffing, in most of these examples, the county government does have some financial skin in the game, but it varied quite a bit. Most of the EDCs, with the exception of Fremont County, which is more driven by business and institutional memberships, most of them get about half of their funding from county and municipal contributions. So in that range, in Alamosa County, the county government contributed $25,000 a year, whereas in Logan County, it was nearly $50,000 a year. In a lot of these situations, it was common to have intergovernmental agreements, and that kind of stipulated how the financial allocation is based proportionately on population size. In terms of staffing, in most examples we looked at, there was at least one paid staff position, usually an executive director, and then a full or part-time administrative support position. We were also interested in learning about how these entities played a role in supporting businesses throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Only a few were directly involved in allocating the CARES Act funds, but they took a proactive role in reviewing applications and then coordinating with county finance departments to disperse the funds. Others tapped into their own budgets to offer some innovative grant programs for businesses. And then in some cases, the counties and the EDC were able to leverage contributions from community foundations. And then in one example, a development corporation pooled together funds from local investors to help underwrite some of this lending. A few business marketing initiatives also emerged. So for example, in Otero County, their Southeast Colorado Strong program was a region-wide marketing effort that kind of created the centralized online hub where anyone could purchase gift certificates to support participating local businesses. Next slide. So just a few thoughts on some key findings from this first part of our research. While there are pros and cons to the different approaches, the benefits of the EDC model is that it allows some flexibility, opportunities to be proactive and forward-thinking, and the nonprofit model is sometimes nimbler than government. Another key takeaway is from the vast majority of the interviews we did is that alignment between county leadership priorities and the economic development program is pretty critical. There are lots of different funding scenarios to consider, but it does seem like places where municipalities and counties had some financial skin in the game were functioning at a slightly higher level. And perhaps the most important takeaway is that with limited resources, the economic development entity should hone in on several key roles, but not try to do everything. Not saying that the entity shouldn't dabble in community development. I think there's a fairly strong case that it should, but just to pick areas to focus on so that resources aren't spread too thin. And that kind of leads to this idea of strategic planning. So we found that some sort of strategic planning exercise is fairly crucial to determining the game plan. And an essential piece of that is doing an inventory of Elbert County's key assets and determining how to build from those existing assets. Again, the more specific, tangible action program is chartered to undertake, the better. And then finally, identifying key stakeholders early on in the process and build a foundation of people willing to invest money, time, or expertise. And one thing we heard a lot of is that there seems to be a shift occurring in the economic development world, away from going out and trying to recruit companies from outside the state or region, and really focusing on building what already exists within the community to spur entrepreneurialism. Next slide. This is just kind of a summary snapshot of the slides we just discussed. We don't really need to focus on it, but it will be available in the presentation afterwards for you to review. And I think we'll leave the Q&A on my section to the end, right, Brad?
Yeah, let's give you all the information first. It'll just be another 3 to 5 minutes of presentation, and then we can take questions as long as you've got time budgeted. So thank you, Andrea, for that. I'm going to talk about the second part of our research, which was revenue sources. How do different counties comparable to Elbert, how do they raise revenue to deliver the types of services that their constituents expect? And where is Elbert an outlier, and where are you more conventional? So what we found on top revenue sources, your sales tax in Elbert County is on the low end, so it's 1% for the county. And we found a spread from 1 to 3% with these different counties that we looked at. In terms of what that revenue raises, the 1% in Elbert County, it's not too different from these other counties in terms of the actual amount of money that's raised. But again, the tax rate itself was on the low end. All these other counties have a lodging tax, and of course, county requires hotels and lodging to have a lodging tax. So our understanding is we don't yet have that type of development in Elbert, but this is just something to have on the radar screen, that when you start seeing more lodging or hotel development pop up in the county, to consider adding to the lodging tax as a way to generate some revenue, and also it exports the burden to the visitors who are staying in the lodging as opposed to the residents within the county. Property tax. Elbert County does generate a high amount of property tax. However, it is extraordinarily imbalanced between residential and commercial. There's very little commercial property tax base in Elbert County, and thus, I think, underlining the importance of launching a new economic development effort to grow that commercial tax base. So this chart looks at, excuse me, the source of property tax from the comparable counties that we looked at. The red shaded color is the amount of property tax in these counties that are raised through residential tax base. The purple is commercial, the yellow is industrial. And again, by far, Elbert's a bit of an outlier here, being so dependent on residential tax base. And do keep in mind that the state taxes residential and commercial properties differently. So for residential property, we pay as residents, as homeowners, we pay 7% of the appraised value. And that's the basis for our tax, is 7% of value. On commercial properties, it's more than 4 times that. It's 29% on commercial property. So if we do encourage more commercial development in Elbert, that could dramatically impact in a positive way the tax base and help the county deliver a higher level of services moving forward. We looked at license and permit fees. In terms of your development fees in Elbert County, you're actually on the higher end of revenue, and your fees are also on the higher end of development fees that are charged elsewhere. So we would not recommend any changes here, other than they seem to be appropriate for the type of development that's happening in the county. We looked at multipliers on this. So when we do, back to the commercial development narrative, if we are going to try to encourage commercial development, if we create more primary jobs in Elbert County, will that also create additional jobs? That's what a multiplier basically is. For each new job we create that is rooted in the county, does that create other jobs that service those jobs or that feed on the income created by those jobs? So the second bullet here is important. In Colorado, for every primary job created, another 1.4 jobs are created on average. So if we do go heavier on commercial development or try to encourage that in Elbert County, we're not only creating primary jobs locally, but also potentially a multiplier from each job that's created. So in conclusion, on this second part of research, what are opportunities for Elbert County? We do think encouraging commercial development makes sense in terms of increasing the revenue base. And again, this is not just about raising a bunch of money. It's about the financial capacity to deliver services that a growing population expects. So we do think there are strong benefits for Elbert and tons of upside on the commercial development side. The county should consider in the future potentially increasing sales tax, particularly if there are needed services and improvements that resonate with your residents. Any increase in sales tax in the future would require a vote of residents due to Tabor. But there is the potential, we think, there to look at that, particularly if it's tied to a package, again, of specific services and improvements for county residents. Other rural counties in Colorado have done this. They've brought issues to the voters, and they range from different capital improvements to different service enhancements tied to specific increases in sales tax that then go in front of the voters. Another opportunity for Elbert is potentially bonding any future increase in sales or property tax. This is, again, a common practice throughout Colorado. And if there are different infrastructure and public facility needs that are important, again, to your voters, there may be an opportunity to bond for this. An example would be a library, or perhaps, if you don't have a fire district in place, a fire station or something like that. And then longer term on revenue, again, as hotels and lodging start pioneering their way into Elbert County, do consider increases to lodging tax to capture some of the revenue that would be an outcome of that type of development. So with that, we will go to questions.
Questions or comments?
I'd like Mark to comment on what we just heard there. How is that going to help you with respect to recruiting economic development?
Thank you, Commissioner Thayer. Really, I have two key takeaways, one from each of the studies. The first one on study one has to do with an economic development strategic plan that was recommended. This ties directly to the goals in our comprehensive plan. And then if you look at study two, it was already clearly highlighted, but the low commercial industrial tax base, that's illuminating. So that's a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate the work in actually putting it together visually, and really, I think we've recognized for a long time that well, Gallagher is gone, but the old Gallagher balance of 55% from non-residential property and 45 from residents is kind of certainly a stretch goal when you're starting at about over 90% of your tax base, taxable money coming from residences. But I think for just the health of the county, we've always, what we're striving for is varied sources of income and predictable sources of income. When we got all our eggs in one basket, if you see another housing bust, that's what led to our county going for about 10 years, just kind of trying to keep the lights on while we clawed our way back to a revenue level that I think in 2016 we finally got back to where we'd been in 2008. So, and I think Mark and your focus as we look at these is, we know proximity kind of makes us a bedroom community of Denver. Land prices make building of residences, attractive, but, to strengthen our local businesses, to recruit businesses that not only support our citizens here, but eventually to get to the point where we're actually employing our citizens here versus having half the county leave every day to go to Denver, is, again, much better for us in the long run. We're always, just based on proximity, we're always going to be somewhat of a bedroom community in that portion of the county. But, to have so many people employed outside and dependent on decisions made in the metro versus here isn't a good place to be, but it gives us plenty to work work on. So
Yeah.
I appreciate this work specifically because, again, it kind of consolidates things that we've known intuitively or have seen the numbers but have never put them all together in one chart. So as for lodging, we'll see what happens, but I'm not sure what would draw people out here regularly enough to stay overnight. But we'll see what happens in the future. So.
Yeah, and you're right, Commissioner Richardson, that diversification is going to be a key component for us moving forward to handle the stresses and demands on our essential services that we provide to our citizens. Any other questions or comments from you, commissioners, or anything
I'd
for
like to make
Brad or Andrea?
one more comment on the multiplier effect. When we did put the comprehensive plan together, it was stated that county residents spent $328 million for goods and services outside of the county. If you got some fraction of that back, and I'm just do the simple math, $328 million times 1%, that's doubling your sales tax the easy way. So there's much more in a positive sense from this than just property tax. There's the goods and services and all of those kind of things that add to the multiplier effect.
All right. Well, with that, since we do have members of the public present, I don't think they were here for this item, but if there's any comments or thoughts from what y'all might have heard here today, we'll take them. And seeing none, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Brad, Andrea, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty. The next item we had on discussion was just a draft of our 2022 budget guidelines from the BOCC, and this is kind of the kickoff to, I mean, we're always in budget. We're either executing the budget we passed last year or auditing our numbers from last year or preparing for the next year's budget. So this is kind of the kickoff for developing next year's budget. And each year we publish kind of broad guidance on kind of the items that we're looking for that we'd like staff to focus on. They're articulated in this document that would like it in April to finalize. So Sam, if you could make sure that we've talked with the other elected officials about it, asked for their input, and over the next few weeks before our next meeting, if you could circulate it with the directors and department heads to see if there's something big we missed or there's concerns regarding the focus here. I mean, coming out of COVID, I know there's a lot of things a little bit different budgetary-wise this year and probably the next 2 years, and I think we did put some information in here about looking where we could allocate CARES and perhaps preserve some general fund or other fund monies, which I know is always kind of slippery with audit because we can't use CARES for budgeted items. So, but to get at some of maybe some unbudgeted items that we've been trying to get at for years but just haven't had the funding, if it fits, that's probably the direction we want to go.
Will do, Commissioners.
Okay. Anything from? Okay, thank you. Alrighty, next item we had for discussion was pretty much COVID-19 response. I mean, I don't know if you want to celebrate it as an anniversary, but I think tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of the governor's announcement that we were going to shut down the state for 14 days to preserve our medical capability. And personally, I think at the state level guidance on this and direction on this has gone on too long. All the counties are different. It took a long time to get the state to even recognized that and developed what they called the dial system, where there were looks at specific components of COVID, whether it be the percentage of people that were tested that were positive, the number of cases per 100,000 that were positive, and then numbers being hospitalized. And, you know, from a state level, some of that makes a lot of sense. From a smaller county level, very little of it makes sense. I mean, we're looking at hospitalization rates in a county that doesn't have hospitals. That, I mean, we are 0.5% of the state's population, surrounded by counties that have 1/3 of the state's population, and about half of the hospitalization capability in the state is within about a 45-minute drive of us. So our impact on state hospitals' capacity is almost nil. You know, when you start looking at small numbers, I think a few days ago we had a day of, I think it was 6 cases, but 5 were within one household. Over time, our places where we can really identify spread from one person to another has been almost entirely within households. I know my information's a little old, but I think when we looked at it about 6 months ago, it was something like 43% of our cases had ties to somebody within their own household. The rest were relatively random. We talked a little bit in the earlier presentation. We've got about 12,000 citizens plus that have jobs outside the county. As we started seeing you know, numbers come in of folks positive, they were exactly where you would have expected them. I mean, early on, it was almost exclusively on the western edge and the northwest part of the county. As we got into the summer, we started seeing cases pop up further and further east, but they were fairly randomly distributed just as COVID became more prevalent. You know, within the county, again, we're a political subdivision of the state. Essentially, we have the authorities the state grants us, but being a county with limited resources, where we apply those resources has still been solely up to us. I think our public health director had come. Oh, okay. Hey, Dwayne, I did, yeah, come on up. But I did want to thank Dwayne. We went for most of 2019 without a public health director or anybody in the public health position. They're hard to hire, in high demand, and when we actually had discussed in 2019 whether we wanted to join Tri-County. At the time, that seemed like it might be a reasonable solution. As things have turned out, I'm glad we didn't make those steps. I'm glad we continued to keep our own local public health department, and ourselves as the Board of County Commissioners also acting as the Board of Health. But I did just want to take a moment to really thank Dwayne for the year of work here. I mean, we did not hire him with the idea that we were going to roll within 2 months into a pandemic. I know that wasn't on your mind at the time when you were applying either, but you know, as frustrating as it is for everybody, to have a public health director that understands rural areas and kind of, you know, again, he's got a job to kind of push the overall message of what's right, but I think has been very reasonable. You know, last year in the supporting of actually having graduations at high schools when most in the state were not happening. You know, providing assistance to churches that we reopened last year well before the Supreme Court decided that was the right thing, and I'm surprised it took the Supreme Court that long to decide that church and worship was essential. You know, I know it's been a long road with a lot of different opinions on what right Like I said, I appreciate you continuing to pump out the information you have. We published, it was almost a year to the day that we as the Board of Health and Board of County Commissioners put out kind of our first message. It wasn't an order, but a message on COVID-19, and it was essentially that we viewed our role, recognizing the resources we had or didn't have in the county, that our role was to keep our citizens informed and allow them to make the best decisions for themselves and their neighbors. That's kind of the path that we've taken, where we could interpret restrictions in a way that made sense for us, we have, and I think Dwayne has done that as well. Appreciate that. But I know you got your laptop there, so if you had some general numbers on where we've been for the last year, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Am I close enough? Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Let me adjust this a little bit. Try to do it this way. As you had stated, we're a little over a year into this. Hopefully we are at, I'm going to say, the 12th month in terms of this is the last final month that we really have any significant restrictions or burdens that are foisted upon the community. So it's good timing for this conversation as the Dial 3.0 debuts today, and there are significant easements in the new Dial framework.
Okay. Did they actually release that then? Because I know there was discussion that they would announce it yesterday, and that was disrupted.
So I don't know, it was late yesterday afternoon or early yesterday evening, we got notification, and they are live today,
Okay.
The 24th. So very quickly, I'll try to run through the changes. There are updated metrics, in other words, more wider or expansive bands of metrics that are permissible now. And there are increased capacity limits. Most notably, restaurants can now go to 100% capacity so long as they can accommodate 6 feet of distancing. Hopefully that helps some restaurants, perhaps not all restaurants in the county. There are, as I stated, wider bands for the, if I can pull this up here, the color-coded dial colors, for lack of a better term. So currently the county is in level blue, caution. The 7-day incidence rate for that is between 36 and 100 cases per 100,000 residents. The next less restrictive level is a level green, which is protect our neighbors. Previously, counties that wanted to operate under protect our neighbor status had to apply to the state and get approval to operate in that status. That's no longer the case. If we want to operate in that, we'll have a conversation, not an application per se, a conversation with the state. The 7-day incidence level for level green permits up to 35 cases per 100,000 over a 7-day rolling period. Around the 6th or 7th of March, we dipped into that. We would need to maintain that for 7 days along with percent positivity. Percent positivity for level green needs to be no greater than 5%. Again, we've dipped into that earlier this month. The last probably close to 3 weeks, we've had more cases certainly than we would like. So we're not out of the woods yet. However, things like outdoor unseated events, or are no longer restricted. We can implement local capacity limits if we choose to for that, or we may choose not to. An easy example of that is Elizabeth Stampede or other rodeos, community events, things like that. The possibility exists for those types of events to be at 100% capacity. There are still some capacity limits for indoor seated events, depending on the venue. Generally, it's a 50% capacity. But certainly with our high school gyms and things like that, in the season we're in other words, coming out of basketball season, I think the only remaining indoor sport is typically volleyball at this point. And then, of course, high school graduations, should they choose to do them indoors. I feel comfortable stating that anybody that wants to attend a high school graduation at an indoor high school gymnasium will most likely be able to attend. So I don't anticipate families will have to pick and choose which family and friends that they invite to their students' graduation. A lot of the other things don't necessarily apply to our businesses in Elbert County. The information I updated this morning in the situation update that went out and is available online. This morning's update has links to all the relevant documents. One thing of note, the updated dial does not currently change or has not currently changed Colorado's statewide mask mandate for the time being. The executive order, the current executive order for masks expires on April 3rd. At that time, the governor may choose to make modifications, understanding that COVID-19 still presents risks to healthy Coloradans. So we recommend that folks continue practicing layers of protection. The mask mandate will be in effect until April 3rd. At that time, I'm sure they'll look at the data and see where prevailing hospitalizations and percent positivity and incidence rates are. I would be surprised if it lasted beyond another 30 days. Don't really have an indication whether the governor would roll it over for an additional 30 days, but I think that would most likely be the last rollover of that. Which brings me to the point about the county's emergency declaration and when do we get out of that?
Yeah.
My recommendation would be to keep it until April 16th, so for about 3.5 more weeks. And then at that time, presumably, we would discontinue it. But that's simply my feedback. That's a decision for y'all.
Yeah, my understanding, and I think you may have mentioned it, but just didn't register that dial 3.0 stays in effect through the 14th or 15th of April. And then from my understanding in talking with the state and others is that that's the end of it for the state. The dial may exist as a framework that counties can choose to follow or
That's correct. That's my understanding at this point.
Okay.
Yep. The simple talking point is the dial goes away on April 16th.
Okay. All right. And that's, I mean, I would kind of ask your input, but my thought, for me personally, the 16th is it. I mean, if the state wants to push it beyond that, there's going to be a strong demand for justification. But I think that gives you some time to kind of think through what your recommendations are going forward. But after that 16th date, we need to stand up as a county and be our own county. And
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that.
I'm happier
and
with the looser restrictions right now, and I think in most cases, you had mentioned restaurants. I know, when we have booths back to back, with dividers, that's kind of deemed a physical barrier. So I think there's a few restaurants that are still going to be stressed a little bit with 6-foot separation, but those are very few. And if Stacy can kind of talk through with them what makes sense as well. We need to get everything back to as normal as possible. I know we've seen I don't even know if you can call it, our numbers are so small to say something is a spike or a surge in the county is hard to, hard to say, because it's generally small groups have made big differences. So.
Also on the immediate horizon is Elizabeth Fire Rescue beginning their COVID-19 testing in the coming weeks, and then subsequently vaccinations. We picked up the refrigerator yesterday. They have to, as part of the protocols for becoming an enrolled vaccine provider, they have to have the refrigerator record temperatures for a period of a week and document that before they can actually receive vaccine. For folks that may be listening, those activities will take place at the former Frontier High School in Elizabeth. It's anticipated at this point that COVID testing will be offered twice a week. I believe on Mondays and Wednesdays is the plan. And then vaccinations will be offered on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it'll be an iterative process. Hopefully folks take full advantage of that. We're fortunate to be able to support that through the COVID coordination and response funding, federal pass-through dollars that are coming through CDPHE. So as warmer weather gets here, with more COVID resources available through that opportunity and a declining number of hopefully infections, I think each week that goes by we're getting in an exponentially better space.
I appreciate that. Comments?
The only comment that I have is I can't wait for April 16th.
I concur wholeheartedly.
No, and there's been, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Dwayne, for everything you've done, but also for working with us, because I know at times we were pushing the limits on how we wanted to allow the citizens in this county to operate and things like that. So I appreciate your effort.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, I was going to say just it's been a very damaging year for our nation, for our state, for our county, and this isn't directed at you, but just the fact that we've got folks growing up that are looking to government for permission to live their lives is just wrong. The fact that, as a country that was based on the rule of law, that we're all becoming very comfortable breaking the rules and expecting those above us to. I mean, it's just bad in general for society, and I think if there's lessons to be learned, and I hope that there's a lot of discussion amongst. I know there's already a lot of discussion amongst commissioners, but I think at CalFO, at the state, at just general leadership of how do you operate in an emergency in a manner that preserves society. I mean, as I said, to me, it's just abhorrent that we've become kind of a nation of scofflaws. That, I mean, regardless of the fact that I don't like the restrictions, that kind of turning a blind eye to things here, it has the potential to continue to just a complete breakdown. And, a year under sometimes very strong restrictions, sometimes very light, and it's arguable which is which depending on who you are, is just not been healthy. I mean, I can throw out the other numbers, and I think we have done well as a county. When you look in comparison, total number of people infected per capita compared to statewide, statewide numbers were about 1.7 times higher. Number of hospitalizations, which can't be tied to whether people want to take tests or not. They were sick enough to be in the hospital. I think statewide was 1.6 times higher than this county. So, you know, on the other end, I mean, so those are good numbers. On the bad numbers, I mean, we've had 12 deaths that were related to COVID, 6, I believe, within the nursing facility in Simla, and that's incredibly sad. But worse to me is we've had 13 suicides. Went back over the numbers back to the last 20 years of numbers. We've had an average of 4.2 suicides per year, with 13 this year. We had 2 years where the high was 7. One of those years was an unfortunate year where there was a little rash of suicides at the Elbert school amongst our youth, but this so far exceeds that. We've seen the stressors on, well, our nonprofits, our food banks. This isn't ending. Their numbers are way up. Human Services has seen numbers increase, and certainly the severity of incidences at homes go up. So it can't end soon enough, and at least in my mind, it ends on the 16th. If the state waffles, they're, you know, they have an opinion, but we have a county that we're supposed to be taking care of. So
I don't think we'll be alone on the 16th. I do want to also mention, just by way of an update, the state also released a public health order yesterday easing visitation restrictions for residential care facilities, which has been another
so people can
very
actually go
painful.
see their parents.
Yes.
And hold their hands.
And it offers guidance on unvaccinated residents, vaccinated visitors, and things like that. And then lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the commissioners serving as the Board of Health for your leadership throughout this time. Certainly, we didn't always agree on our approaches, but reasonable minds can disagree, and that's part of the process. But I think there was always a healthy respect, and I greatly appreciate that. And we certainly couldn't have got through this without everyone's input and leadership. So thank you all very much, one and all.
Okay, appreciate that. And I would ask, just over this next, well, less than a month now, our transition does need to be back. I mean, the information that goes out daily is good, but to continue to ensure that folks have a good resource of balanced information on what's best for, I mean, and we've got to break away from COVID in that as well, and the behavioral health, mental health pieces of it, so everybody knows what resources are available. And I know Sam's setting up something soon with all the nonprofits in the area to kind of see how we can better integrate as a county and get those more community-led resources stood up, and everybody understanding what they are. And again, not directed at you, just kind of more so everybody knows. So, but I think we'll be a stronger community for this coming out of it. So.
Sorry, one last thing. I also need to thank and recognize the leadership of Sam, Bart, Alex Jakubowski, Sheriff Norton, that have been part of our morning check-ins over the last year plus, probably. So thank you all.
Yeah, if I could, I know we had some members of the public here today, and I'd like to hear from them on if you have. Yeah, and just if Maggie, if you could give your name and address, so we've got it for the minutes, and we'll give you 3 minutes. And
let me know. I've got about 30 minutes, so.
I know you can. People will start waving at me in about 3
Okay.
minutes.
My name is Maggie Witherby. My address is 44447 Homestead Road. Want to, with all due respect to Dwayne and others in this room that have had the official responsibility, I want to offer a different point of view this morning. We have been watching with our organization, Elbert County Stands Up, and we've been talking about the issues of the COVID emergency and so on. If any of you have been to our meetings starting in December 13th, continuing, you know that we have a different point of view on this. I'm jumping around in my agenda here. We have several comments that have come in online today, I believe, because several of the folks couldn't make it because of their work schedules. So I hope that you'll take a look at those. And before I don't get to the end of my presentation here, I want to tell you that obviously we favor opening our county as soon as possible. You're familiar with the resolution that the town of Monument passed, and we are advocating that towns and counties all over the state of Colorado follow in their footsteps. Custer County passed a resolution, I think a week or two ago. Teller County, El Paso County passed a resolution yesterday. There are other towns such as Woodland Park and Rangeley and other towns throughout Colorado who are taking this action. It's really interesting, the timing of the state, and I think it's probably been prompted by all of the actions of towns and counties across the state which have said enough is enough. We would advocate, again, opening up our county as soon as possible. The other point I want to make on that is that we never, ever want to do this again. Ever. And I don't care what they tell us about what kind of an invisible virus is coming in our direction. We can't allow our economy to be destroyed. We can't allow people's lives to be destroyed. We can't allow these things to continue. We can't allow our loss of freedoms and liberties to keep getting stripped from us. This is really unacceptable. And I think County Commissioner Richardson alluded to that in some of his comments. I want to make a few, I know I won't have time for everything here, but one thing I want to make you aware of is that there is a lawsuit in the state of Ohio. They filed a lawsuit in August of 2020. How are we doing?
If you could wrap it up.
Okay. This lawsuit basically says that there is no COVID emergency. There is no science that really supports this. And we really have to look at that very carefully. They are following up. They have new legislation in the state of Ohio, and they are forcing the state to provide evidence to back up their emergency declarations and other things. We're trying to get a similar lawsuit going here in the state of Colorado, which would directly challenge Governor Polis's declaration of emergency. So we have lots of other information that we would like to share with you. I think what we will do is we'll put some of this in writing for you, and we'll submit that in that manner. Okay. Any questions?
No, but thank you for that. And I know the clerk did say we did get some emails in on this topic, and we'll include those email submissions in the minutes.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie. And thank you for what your group's doing.
Thank you.
I've met with you all before, and there are some things that governments can do and can't do, but, you know, it's still the people that are going to rule. So, sir, just your name and address. And
Trent Chapel, 30680 Mountain View Trail. I'm sure we're aware. In Colorado, COVID has killed 5,874 people. Out of 5,759,000 people. That's less than 0.01%. You got a better chance of being struck. We're almost winning the lottery and struck by lightning odds. That's one issue. The COVID survival rate is at 99.998%. We're using something that is minuscule to affect everybody in this county, everybody in this state, everybody in this country. And as you brought up, it's depressing this country, it's depressing the people of this county, and we're having suicides. We need to put a stop to it, and to help with the 16th, it needs to happen today. And then, according to Glenn Beck, when he sued the CDC, they did a 10-month survey on masks. And a 10-month extended survey, it is 1%, which doesn't meet the plus minus, which renders masks statistically 0% effective. That's what I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Pamela Chappell, 30680 Mountain View Trail, and I'm here to talk about the vaccines. They're coming in a few months for the general public. I am here to talk about the mRNA shot, to tell you about my friend Thomas. But first, the COVID shot is not a vaccine. A vaccine is designed to help your system build immunity towards a virus. The mRNA is a shot, a genetic modification which attacks and destroys the immune system. In test trials with coronaviruses using ferrets, every single ferret had a severe reaction and all the animals died in the end, all of them. This next statement is from CDC. None of the mRNA shots have been FDA approved. None of them are approved. The nation is being used as test guinea pigs. So this is an experimental shot. We do not need a vaccine when we have extremely successful treatments available. One is the Z-Pak, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, to name a few. Building a strong immune system, diet, exercise. D3 is one of the most important vitamins to take against COVID, but also zinc and C is extremely important for building the immune system. And I have been working with Dr. Jim Meehan, who is also an infectious disease doctor. The shots most readily used are Moderna, Pfizer, and now Johnson & Johnson. The pandemic has been over for months, states many doctors and scientists. We are at a 99.998 survival rate. My military friend Thomas, who is a psychologist for my youth group, which also we have had several youth in my group from Strasbourg, Bennett, Elbert, who have talked suicide. Thomas is a psychologist working with these children. Thomas he's military, he took the Moderna shot. A week later, he caught a seasonal cold. 4 days later, he started having me document his symptoms.
Commissioners, that's 3 minutes.
Yeah, if you could. I do have my extra time for her. Well, I can't, but if you could continue, but please be as quick as possible.
Anyway, his body's immune system is failing and it is attacking his own organs. His vital load is off the charts. He could not hold his urine. His blood work his kidneys are shutting down. His neurological system started collapsing. He started having pain in his legs, and now he is in a wheelchair. On his last blood work to check for organ damage, he is, to check other failures of his organs, he is having tremors. And then he actually pulled his IV out, and he started to bleed out. He's basically now, he's dying. He's on morphine, and he's not going to make it. He told me he is a warrior and he is not afraid to die. He wanted me to tell his story today in hopes of saving other lives and to learn the dangers of the mRNA shot coming. In closing, we cannot let the governor dictate how we manage our family's health care or control what we eat. Employers should never be able to demand an employee take the shot or to make them feel guilty. And some employees are actually being threatened that they're going to lose their jobs, and this should not be happening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah, she was asking Thomas's age. He's actually a little older than I thought when I told you. I thought he was in his 30s, but he's actually in his mid-40s. 40, he's about like 45.
thank you. Yeah, and I would just, Dwayne, if you could get us what was published yesterday, because one, we're at a little disadvantaged today because I don't know exactly what we are being directed to do as of today, but this won't be the last time we discuss this, obviously. So, but thank you for coming out today, and thank you for what you're doing with Elbert County Stands Up, because again, I think going forward, that's where the resiliency in our county is, and it's in the people and folks working together. So, with that, I know we're had a lot of topics today, but the next one I know is kind of near and dear to a lot of us as well, and that was discussion of the pause ballot initiative, now initiative 16. Again, we've got it on discussion, but we also have a letter and resolution prepared opposing it. But I was going to turn it over at this point to Commissioner Thayer, who I know has done a lot of research on this item. And
thank you. Chris rode over with me this morning, and he said, Grant, I've never seen you this emotional about anything before. This protect animals from unnecessary suffering and exploitation. The title sounds fine. I treated lots of animals, cows, horses, dogs, and cats well, but the poison is in the details. If you go through the definitions, you find out that it has nothing to do with protect animals from unnecessary suffering. It's basically another destruction attempt for agriculture and pet owners. And one of the things that it defines animal means any living non-human creature, including but not limited to a dog, a cat, a horse, and livestock. And then this is the one that catches you. Livestock means bovine, camelids, caprine, equine, bovine, porcine, fish, and poultry. And then it goes on to talk about the natural lifestyle span of these animals and when you can butcher them and how you can treat them during that period. It says that a cow lives 20 years. But it also says in there you can't castrate a bull calf. Well, if you've ever tried to eat a 5-year-old bull, there isn't much steak there that's edible. Everything has to be ground. They talk about a turkey lives 10 years. I talked to a poultry person, and he said if you have to wait till 2.5 years old to butcher a turkey, it'll be dead before then because they are bred now so that with their breast development, they wouldn't be able to walk. it talks about the lifespan of a chicken, which is 8 years in their definitions. Well, a 2-year-old chicken is tough. And from what Chris talked to somebody on what is the natural time for a chicken, and most chickens that are harvested for meat are harvested within 8 to 10 weeks. So all of a sudden, none of that stuff works. But then you go on to the animal husbandry. I've raised several thousand cows over my lifetime, and one of the ways that I got my cattle better over time was using artificial insemination, because you find the best bull out there, you buy that semen, and then you breed the cow with it, and then you could, or at least I could, see a significant difference in the quality of the natural breeding of a cow and the artificial breeding. You can't even pregnancy test them in the traditional way, because you have to put your arm inside the cow. And if you go through all the definitions, it says you can't touch their genitals and all that kind of stuff. And I know there's a young lady out here that runs a rescue. That means you wouldn't be able to neuter the animal. And I don't know about you, but over my lifetime, I've had several rescue animals, and each one of them, when they were dropped at my doorstep, had been neutered. The other thing is that you can't neuter a horse. And I don't know about anybody in this room, but I'm not man enough to ride a stallion. The whole idea of it is this, and a lot of this animal husbandry is done for the betterment of the animal. It's not done to hurt them. But the real thing about all this, and I hope that people will read this, because our legislators seem to think that we don't know how to take care of, we can't make good decisions. And I'm going to sum this up. It is my sincere hope that all voters, legislators, and the governor realize that agriculture and animal ownership decisions belong to individual Colorado citizens that know what's best for the animal welfare. There's other legislation coming down, or potential legislation, I guess is a better way to put it, that may affect the transportation of animals, and it may even affect other things that our young children, their grandchildren in my view, how they can enjoy their animals. One of the things that we got to remember, how important of an economic benefit agriculture is to the state of Colorado. I'm the commissioner for District 3. It covers about 80% of the Elbert County, but it only has a third of the people, because that's where the animals all are. And that's really important. In the package, there's a resolution in there to oppose this ballot initiative of 16. And Chris has written a letter to the governor stating our opposition. I think you were going to have Sam read. Okay.
Did you have any comments you wanted to make? No, the only thing I want to say is, it's bad when the politicians are dictating to the citizens on what economy or what businesses and stuff are good for the county or state or anything like that. When they're trying to kill the oil and gas, if they're trying to kill the agricultural, the only way the state or whoever is going to survive is to have diversity in the economy. And if you start limiting what you can and can't do, this state will go down further downhill than it already has.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that, to clarify, this is a citizens initiative. Colorado is one of the few states that allow citizens to file ballot measures. In status-wise, this very bad idea has been submitted to the Secretary of State. They have something called the Title Board that essentially looks at the title of the measure and looks at the language and sees if they match. I think it was a gentleman from the Cattlemen's Association that described it such as, that's all they do. I mean, if somebody wanted to set an initiative that we should have purple dragons in the state of Colorado and the language and the title were consistent, that, you know, the Purple Dragon Initiative and the language said, you know, statute should allow the keeping of purple dragons, it would go through the title board. And so it's through the title board. There's going to be some challenges in court. And I know Farm Bureau and Cattlemen's and some of the other breeding associations, livestock associations, will try to stop it through the courts before signatures can be collected. But if it clears those hurdles, then there's about 124,000 signatures that need to be collected. It's a statutory change, not a constitutional change, so there's no certain percentage of those signatures that have to be collected in all the counties. They can focus on collection only in the urban areas, and they'll be walking around with a petition that has a title of prevention of abuse and cruelty to animals. And I know Grant had said, well, this is stupid, nobody would ever sign this if they read it. Well, my response to that is, we'll have wolves soon. And that was one of those initiatives that when somebody says, should we have wolves, a few people might have actually scratched their head to decide whether it was a good idea or not. If you're just asked, should we prevent cruelty to animals, the answer is generally going to be, of course. So this is going to be an education thing. It's set, if signatures are collected, it would be on the ballot in 2022. So there's time to ensure people are aware and to ideally disrupt or disrupt the collection of signatures isn't probably the right term, but at least to make people think a little bit, and maybe they'll have a harder time collecting signatures. I do think it's in terms of what the language does and the title, I think there is a disconnect, so hopefully that can be brought forward in court, because I do think this actually is cruel to animals, as Grant was saying. I mean, if you got to keep a chicken for 2 years before it can be slaughtered, and at 8 weeks it was ready to go, you know, you get to that point, you know, you've got obese animals that are just struggling to survive or move around on their own. Certainly, I think it interrupts a lot of veterinary training, and we got a couple of people that wanted to be called. But if part of veterinary training is actually understanding what a healthy, you know, to palpate a healthy animal, to know what right feels like, well, you know, touching an animal in that way that's not for the health of that animal, and it's very specific in the language that any procedure that's done has to be for the health of that animal. If you're just saying, hey, veterinary student, this is what right feels like, by this it's defined as sexual abuse of an animal. And so it just, again, common sense versus and intent versus what's in the letter of a law once it's passed become very important. But before we moved on to any reading of the resolution, I did want to call on the two folks that wanted to speak today. The first was Tracy McLean. She's president of the Stampede organization.
Please leave your message for Ellie Billings.
Okay. And I know she was traveling today and at another person's home, so yeah. Okay, Dr. Rice. The other person that wanted to speak was Dr. Dale Rice, who's a local vet that some of you may know.
Hello, it's Dr. Rice.
Hey, Dr. Rice, this is Commissioner Richardson. Tracy McLean had contacted us and said that you might have some interest in giving your opinion on the PAWS initiative. And,
Absolutely.
yeah, if you could, we can give you a few minutes. If you give your name and address for the record,
Sure.
we'd certainly like your input.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Dale Rice, D-A-L-E-R-I-C-E. My address is 7485 Patrick Trail in Elizabeth, Colorado, 80107. I own a practice called Three Peaks Veterinary. I am a veterinarian and own a practice called Three Peaks Veterinary. I think I have some unique abilities to talk about this subject, not just because I'm a veterinarian, but because of my history. I am a second career veterinarian, and what that means is that I had a whole other life before I became a veterinarian. And to tell you what that was, I have a bachelor's and a master's in animal science, animal agriculture, and I worked in the animal production industry in research, quality management, food safety, regulatory compliance. I was considered at that time an expert on food safety, and I've been an invited speaker, a member of the Institute of Food Technologists, a certified quality engineer. I've been at Washington, D.C. many times talking, and was a USDA invited speaker on various food safety topics. And the only reason that's important is because I understand regulations. My last job, I was responsible for a company with almost $1 billion in sales. I was the vice president of food safety, regulatory compliance, and I decided I was going to become a veterinarian for the rest of my life. So the reason, that's my background, and that's why I think I'm qualified to comment on this topic, is that I have both regulatory compliance, as well as I've also been an attending veterinarian for research organizations, and then currently do animal welfare consulting for companies that use animals in research. So I have a kind of a broad background in regulatory compliance. What I don't like about this proposition, I'm not a lawyer, but what I don't like about this proposition is I don't see how at all it can even be enforceable. I think what I read, things like 25% of their life before they can be slaughtered, things like, I don't know if anybody's ever, when you've done over 100 cows, doing preg checking, where I have to stick my arm up the anus of a cow to validate pregnancy and to give diagnosis so the rancher can know what to do with those cows. I certainly don't do it for a thrill. It's a lot of work. It's just a procedure. If we AI, we're going to go vaginally. So that whole concept, whatever that whole part of this law is, just absolutely doesn't make sense. There's goat AI. There's horses that we have to do this for, horse AI, artificial insemination. And so this regulation is a poorly written design. That, and then the issue of pack animals, working animals, and it seems like it's designed extremely poorly and unenforceable at best. It would do nothing but, in my book, cause a tremendous amount of clog. I don't know, Tracy said I had just a few minutes to discuss why I think it's terrible. I'll add one more thing. If the purpose for this regulation or this proposition has to do with animal welfare, I think I have been on animal welfare calls. I have defended, as well as I've been on calls and have turned people in for inhumane handling of animals. And I've also defended people from overzealous regulators that were trying to, overzealous. I didn't know what they were doing, basically, when it came to animal welfare. I'm going to close with, I hope this explains, and I'll take questions if you have it, but I'm going to close with one last statement, and that is, I don't know, there's a gentleman, a professor up at Colorado State University. His name is Dr. Bernard Rollin. I've contacted, in the past, I have worked with him on animal welfare concerns and ethics. Particularly, he's an animal ethicist. He's written many papers and is well known throughout the world for animal ethics. And he described it to me this way, and I'm going to paraphrase, obviously, because it's been a while. But he said, Dale, he says, domestic animals and humans have a pact. Our pact is that We supply the domesticated animals with food, water, shelter, help prevent predators, and we give them medical care when they need it. And in return, they give us something back, whether it's meat, fiber, performance, pleasure. And then we owe them, when it's all done, we owe them a humane death. But that's the pact. So when we have a pact with a cow that's producing animals, my pact for them is to make sure they're well treated and then humanely euthanized at the end of their life as we gain something from that. That's part of the pact. And I'd like to end with that, and I hope that makes some sense of what I said, and I go on record strongly opposing this regulation, whatever proposal. 16.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rice. Actually, I wasn't aware of your previous background, so that's all very helpful, and I thank you for taking your time today. So.
You're welcome. If there's any questions or if you need anything else, you can please feel free to contact me.
All right.
Okay?
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
I'm just going to make a comment. That was good information.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm not the only one that has strong feelings about this.
Yeah. Now, I would say, in fairness, the governor's office did come out earlier this week and say the governor opposes this, which did cause a change in the resolution we had drafted in the letter. And I'm glad to hear he's voiced opposition, but also recognize that he was opposed to Proposition 112, the setbacks for oil and gas, and then once he was in office, encouraged legislation that accomplished the same thing. So we've asked for, we recognized he's come out to verbally oppose, but are asking for action to oppose. I think the Commissioner of Agriculture, which will get copies of this if we send them forward, has publicly said that they can't legally take sides in something like this. I don't think that's true. Obviously, the governor's spoken against it. Until it's on the ballot, generally, folks are free to express their opinion. So up to and including the time signatures are collected and verified, I think our state, both the executive branch and certainly the legislative, can speak loudly against this. But, yeah, was there anybody that did want to speak on this here? Yes, ma'am. If you could just at the microphone, just so we capture your comments for anybody that's watching online.
I don't have the name right now because I didn't bring the paperwork, but I was telling him that we do have a lawyer that's from Malamosa, but she's also a livestock breeder, and she said she would, if you had any paperwork or anything that you thought there was not sure loopholes and stuff, she was willing to go over that for us.
Okay, thank you. And I've been in contact with Commissioner and down that way too, so I think there's some coordination here. Maggie?
It's Maggie Witherby again. Just a very brief comment. We've talked about COVID-19 this morning, and now we're talking about this pause initiative. All of this comes to us from people. There are people in the world that think they have the right to tell us how our future is going to go. One of these people is Klaus Schwab. He has written a book called The Great Reset, and this talks about how they would like to reset and transform our whole world. Have any of you heard about this? If you haven't, come to our meetings. But this has everything, this COVID-19 and the opportunity, they call it an opportunity to transform the world. Part of what they also want to do is transform how we eat. And they would like very much to eliminate the livestock industry. And what we are seeing here with this ballot initiative is how they do it at the local level. We wonder how they get their initiatives done and all their work done over a period of time. This is how they do it. So I just wanted to add that because actually these two issues are quite related. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, if there's no other comment, we'll close that at this time. Sam, did you have the resolution? Yeah.
I do, Commissioners.
Okay.
Resolution 21-blank opposing ballot initiative 16 in order to protect our livestock industry and prevent needless animal suffering. Whereas on March 17, 2021, a citizens initiative entitled Protect Animals from Unnecessary Suffering and Exploitation, PAWS, was approved by the Title Board of the Colorado Secretary of State for petition to the November 2022 general election as Initiative 16, and whereas the initiative would broadly redefine animal sexual abuse in a manner that would criminalize many common and necessary veterinary and animal husbandry practices, and whereas the initiative would additionally require tremendous delays, in some cases years, prior to the humane slaughter of livestock for food, and whereas these delays of up to 1/4 of an animal's statutorily defined lifespan would greatly increase the cost to ranchers to feed and care for these animals, which at slaughter would produce meat of low value to the consumer at a much higher purchase costs. And whereas for many meat-producing animal varieties, specifically poultry, bred for rapid weight gain, the result of delayed slaughter will be the suffering of morbidly obese animals, unable to support their own body weight for years prior to processing. And whereas it has been reported that even the governor of Colorado agrees that the PAWS initiative would hurt Colorado and destroy jobs, and whereas this board abhors the infliction of needless suffering of animals, recognizes that our cattle and livestock producers take great care to treat their animals humanely, therefore be it resolved that the Elbert County Board of County Commissioners of Elbert County, Colorado, that the commission opposes this initiative and urges the governor of Colorado and commissioner of the Colorado Department of Agriculture to do the same, and be it further resolved, urges all citizens of Elbert County to decline to sign any petition that supports placing Initiative 16, PAWS, on the November 2022 ballot. And finally, shall it be resolved that all people that care about the well-being of animals, be they livestock, pets, service animals, or other, take action to defeat this measure if it does make the November 2022 ballot, approved and adopted this 24th day of March 2021.
Mr. Chairman, this has been a discussion item. I would like to see it moved down to an action item.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion and a second to move that to action. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I'd accept a motion to actually approve this and the companion letter to the governor.
I'll make the motion that we approve the resolution and the letter to the governor.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this resolution and the companion letter for the governor. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. All righty. Okay, moving on to our planned action items. First item we have is approval of the minutes from the March 10th, 2021 meeting.
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes for March 10th, 2021 and dispense with the reading.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the March 10 meeting minutes and dispense with reading. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Second item is approval of the March 10th Board of Health minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the March 10th, 2021 Board of Health minutes and dispense with the reading of those minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. A motion and a second to approve the March 10th Board of Health minutes and dispense with reading. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, the third item we have, we had under discussion at our last meeting, was an amendment to the CDS development review schedule. It was to correct an error. There was a $7,500 permitting fee for oil and gas wells that had been dropped off in the last update. This returns that. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. We approve the amendment to the CDS Development Review fee schedule regarding oil and gas permitting.
Second.
Do I have a motion and a second? Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And the final item was a request for authorization for the BOCC to enter into right-of-ways agreements for a couple of cul-de-sacs that Road and Bridge needs. And
Commissioner, I can start out and I'll let Rory kind of bring it home.
Okay.
This is specifically asking for the three of you to authorize our ability to negotiate and enter into agreements for right-of-way specific to two areas that we're planning on potentially putting a cul-de-sac if we're able to come up with a mutual agreement with landowners in the area. The issue, and Rory can expound on this, is our equipment has gotten bigger, and I do have to commend Rory and Monty. We've been working through some issues that have been lingering with roads. Obviously, there's been many issues that we've addressed over the past couple of years. This is one of those. This is a safety issue, which will allow our larger equipment to turn around in areas that we're currently not able to do so. And that's cleans up the safety issue. It also cleans up us having a legal right to go ahead and have our equipment turn around there. And so that's what we're simply asking for from the three of you today, and I'll turn it over to Rory.
Thank you. Rory?
So one of these in particular we've been working on, or I should say Road and Bridge have been working on for probably 2 years. On top of the safety aspect, it's also a big maintenance aspect. We can't properly blade and gravel these roads because we don't want equipment, in particular our dump bellies, backing all the way down. The two roads in particular is County Road 114 east of 1721. Road and Bridge is able to negotiate with two property owners. Again, it's a dead-end road, so I think that's all been surveyed, and okay. And then the last one is County Road 120 west of County Road 14. Similar problem. This is the one that we've been trying to work on for a couple of years. And basically what we're going to do is just vacate some right-of-way that goes through the gentleman's property.
Yeah, so that road becomes private at a certain point. And that was my understanding. That second one it's a county road that then transitions to a private road. So.
Yes, yeah. Well, there's right-of-way that runs through his entire property to the west, and there's never going to be a road there.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Like I said, pretty straightforward. But with that, I'd accept a motion to.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize the county manager the right to enter into a right-of-way agreement for a cul-de-sac, under cul-de-sac agreements.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to allow the county manager, appropriate staff, I'd assume, to enter into agreements for right-of-ways for cul-de-sacs. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Aye, I guess if I didn't say that. So I know this has gone a little long, but last item we really have before recessing for the afternoon session was board planning. Do you have any items you'd like to see brought forward on the next agenda? Okay. All righty. So I guess it'll be the standing items that we generally have on the first meeting of the month. And then would like, if we haven't had a Board of Health meeting prior to then, we probably should sit down and also discuss what current status is based on the changes that were published last night. So, with that, I would call a recess until 1 p.m. At this location, we've got one land use item. It's a minor variance. Or actually, it's a major variance because we're hearing it, but one variance to consider. Thank you very much for coming out today.